Hi, so this is the first time I've ever made a video like this, something completely different. I'm hoping it'll be helpful to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to modify my TAL-1 telescope. It's a Newtonian reflector telescope and I've had it for years. It's great for visual astronomy, it's great for looking at planets and stuff like that. But if I want to use my camera with it, I have to use an adapter. That adapter is the Barlow lens. That's the only way that I can actually get focus on my camera with this telescope. It's something that's due to the size of the eyeball and the length of the camera body. For the light to be in focus to hit the camera sensor is different to how it hits an eyeball. Now, the thing about it is that the Newtonian reflector, apparently, we have this this focuser, and the problem is that the focuser won't go in far enough. Okay, so I can't, like, with my camera, it's so close to focus, it just feels like it needs to go in a little bit further, but there's a physical stop that stops it from being able to do that. So I was looking online and I was looking at various solutions, and it seems that one of the solutions is actually to move the primary mirror, which sits way down here in the tube. Well, this is a fixed thing here, but what I can do is to change these screws. These screws are about 25 millimeters long, and what I can do is change them to longer screws. That's going to move the primary mirror, the concave mirror that captures and reflects the light, up to the secondary, which is around here, which puts it out through the eyepiece. I'm going to move that mirror somewhere around about 35 to 50 millimeters further up the tube. That's about, what's that, about 1.5 to 2 inches, something like that. I'm going to move it up the tube. And what that's going to do is it's going to change where the focus point is. And that should be able to make me use my DSLR with without the Barlow lens here. So that the reason why I want to do this is because with the Barlow lens, I'm automatically increasing the magnification by 2 times. Also decreasing the light by 2 times in doing that, and so it has some issues. This telescope has a focal length of 800 millimeters. My DSLR is a Nikon D5600. It's a crop sensor. That means that anything that's coming out of here is then multiplied by 1.5 times. So effectively my focal length in total is about 1200 millimeters if I don't use the Barlow lens. With the Barlow lens, it's more like 2400 millimeters. So really what I want to do is to be able to use it as a prime, just as it is with the lower magnification, so that I can get things like the moon in one frame rather than having to stitch together many frames in order to do that. And hopefully I'll be able to get it clearer because I'll be using less glass because I don't use the Barlow lens in there. So there are a whole bunch of reasons why I want to do this. Now the problem initially has been, I tried to do this about a month ago, but the problem is that in the country that I'm in Guatemala, I can't find a supplier of M4 bolts that are longer than 50 millimeters. I tried with 50 millimeter bolts to replace the standards that are in there, and it just wasn't quite there, didn't quite do the job. So if you're lucky enough to be in a country where you can get hold of 75, 85 millimeter M4 bolts, then it should be quite a straightforward and relatively quick job for you. Now, the other thing that I also was waiting on is a collimation device. Now, I bought a laser collimator that I'll show you later on that I'll be using to realign the mirrors after I've been playing with them. And I have to say, I am certainly by no means a technical expert. I'm certainly I'm very much an amateur. I really hope this is going to go well, because playing with optics is a very, very sensitive thing to be doing, and I just don't have another option here. So I've got to do it myself. I've got to learn as I go along, and hopefully this is the video that I'll be making, is the video that I was looking for to show me how to do it. So I hope it helps you to do your mod if you want to do one as well. Okay, so here's the bits of kit that I'm going to use. Now here are my bolts that I ordered. Pretty standard M4 bolts. These ones have actually got an Allen key head, which I'm kind of pleased about. I think that's going to work. These are going to be the collimation bolts eventually. The head has got just about the right diameter for what I need, and I'm probably going to go straight with the 85mm ones, simply because I can always wind it back. You know, it's kind of like if I put that one in and find it's not long enough, then I've got to start all over again. So obviously I'm going to try and get it right first time. A couple of screwdrivers. Well, this telescope is a old Russian tank, as I think I've occasionally heard it referred to, or referred to as. So kind of like, it's just very, very normal screwdrivers. And then this is the collimation laser, which I'll use at the end to align the mirrors and hopefully get everything lined up and back into focus again. So the first job is going to be removing the primary mirror cell, and I do that just by these 3 screws here. As I said, it's considering the, let's say, precision optics, a lot of the hardware is fairly bulky stuff. It's not that fiddly yet. So these 3 screws come out. These are the collimation screws that we're going to replace. So that's the 3 mirror cell screws there. Now I found that this one just needs a little nudge to move the mirror cell out a little bit. I've taken it out a few times now, so it's not exactly the first time. Once I get it a little bit out, a little bit free of the housing, I'll put the screwdriver down, because obviously this is a really sensitive bit that I don't want to drop. And there's the mirror cell. Now, a few weeks ago I took the opportunity to put this ring in the centre, the collimation centre spot. It's a very, very useful thing to have on there for when I'm collimating the lens, the telescope rather. So that's what we're going to do, and that we're going to bring over here. So another thing that is useful to have around, of course, is a little cleaning cloth to put the optics on. Make sure they stay as pristine as possible. So I'm going to do it like that. Now I'm going to remove the original collimation screws. Very easy to remove. And they're just going to come out like that. And now the mirror should be more or less free of the mirror cell. And we'll see. Each screw has a little spring under it to help keep the tension on there. And so these are the ones that we're going to replace. These little 25mm screws. I guess they're about 25mm anyway. And I'm really going for it with these ones, right? I mean, there's quite a difference there, so that should hopefully give me enough range to get my focus. There's some other things that we're going to need in here, and that's going to be some little nuts to act as captive nuts. So here are my little M4 nuts, and I'm going to need them because what we're going to do, where these ones have the spring between the mirror and the back plate. If keep everything nice and tight, so we could move this screw without it getting floppy. Now obviously when we put the longer screws in, that's going to be a bit different, and so what we need to do is to put one of these springs onto here, and then we're going to put this nut onto here to hold the tension, hold everything in place, so that we could then, when we turn the screw, then we can move the mirror without the screw kind of like coming out of the body and all that kind of thing. Now what we're actually going to do is going to put two of these nuts onto each bolt and kind of lock them together so that they can't move. Now obviously I'm going to only use pliers to tighten them up, so that they won't kind of, we want to be able to disassemble it again in the future if necessary. So it's not like I'm going to put super glue on the threads or anything like that, but we need them to be tight enough so that they don't come loose when we start moving this bolt. So, first thing to do is to thread each of these long bolts through the back plate. And we can turn it over, drop a spring onto each one. Now ideally I'd also probably put a washer or two in there as well, but unfortunately I can't find washers of this size in this country, and if I want to buy them like on and get them sent in, I have to buy like 200 of them or something. I need 6 and it just seems a bit wasteful. So I'm just going to try without the washer and hope for the best, really. So we're going to thread them onto there. And I want to put a bit of tension on there, so you can see that that's sort of held in place fairly firmly. I can just give it a few more twists just to make sure, and repeat with the other nuts, just to get it all together kind of nicely. So you can see there I kind of wound the spring in a fair way, and it feels quite solid. And obviously there's some play in there and all that kind of thing. That's the way it's going to be. But I kind of want to make sure that it's not kind of flopping around or anything like that. We've got a nice bit of tension on there, and that feels pretty good. I think I'm going to lock the nuts there and see how we get on. So as I kind of explained, I'm sort of in a bit of a field situation here, and I have to use what I got in my toolbox. And what I got in my toolbox is a pair of electrical pliers and an adjustable spanner, and that hopefully is going to be enough. And I'm sure that there's people who are much more professional and have the correct tools who are doing it, maybe cringing a little bit right now, but as I say, just using what I got in my box. Of course, if I had the proper tools for the job, it'd probably be a heck of a lot easier as well. I'm hoping that anybody who's watching this will obviously have a better selection of tools than I have, but there we go, I've got what I've got, and I've done the job with that. So now we're going to put it back into the mirror, and here of course now I've got the hex head in there instead of the screw head, so I'm going to have to use this little hex key to do that. Obviously kind of being careful to not cross thread the thing, it'd be a bit of a disaster. Now as I said, I tried it before with these I guess they were 50mm bolts before, and it really didn't work out for me. I couldn't achieve focus, not quite. It was just so close to being in focus. So I kind of know that I need a little bit more than 50mm, to say the least. And these are the 85mm bolts, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to adjust them all just roughly to the same. So under here I'm just going to feel for the bolt to come to the end of the threaded section there of the mirror holder, and then I know that I've got them all about the same place, and hopefully that'll be enough. There. So let's put it back in the telescope, collimate it, and see what we're doing. Okay, so we're going to put the mirror cell back in. I actually marked with a piece of tape which orientation the mirror cell had. Now, it's probably not really necessary, I don't know. I just figured that if it went in, if it came out that way, it better go back in now. I'm sure that it won't have much effect on it, just might be easier to get the screws in, and because that's what we want to go for now. I'll give it a rough line up like that, because I know that from taking it out before, it's not always the easiest to get these screws back in. I also know that rather like putting the wheel back on a car, with this it's proved very much that I'm going to put all of the screws back in gently first to make sure that everything is possible before tightening them up. As you can tell from experience, I've actually kind of like done it where I got too tight and then realised that I can't get the third one in. So that's the way I've discovered to do it on this scope. Okay, so the mirror's been adjusted. We should be all ready to go. Now what we've got to do is get all the mirrors lined up inside and do the collimation. And so that we're going to use the collimation tool. We need to flip the telescope round and have a go with that. So this little thing is a collimation laser. Now this one I got for, I think it's about like $15 or $20. So they're not really expensive, and it's something that should really help me to be able to line up the mirrors. I must admit it's not something I've found to be a necessarily easy job on here, but I'm very new to the idea. So let's see how we get on. Okay, so for the collimation procedure, there's three things that we have to do. First thing is we have to make sure that the secondary mirror is in the right place. Then we have to make sure that it's in the right orientation. Then we have to make sure that the primary mirror is in the right place as well. Now obviously it's a primary mirror that we've fiddled with, but I've had a lot of problems with this secondary mirror. Some of the adjustment screws are kind of like a little bit tight or a little bit weird, so I'm going to take this opportunity to really see if I can get the collimation right on it. So what I got, these 4 screws of the spider which can kind of like move the mirror around, and I think that's been part of the issue. Hopefully I've got it right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look down the focuser tube right here to see how it looks in there. Hopefully that's kind of like the best shot that I can get of it, and I think that shows that the primary mirror, or that the secondary mirror, is centered within the focuser tube. You can see the circle of the secondary mirror has about the same space all around it. This is as best as I can get the shot with that camera. Quite honestly, I think that's been always the most difficult bit, because the next bit's really quite easy. You're just going to take the collimator, and I'm going to turn it on to 7 because it's kind of bright on my porch today. Be careful not to go and burn my retinas with it, because it can be quite a bright spot. And you see inside it's got this little kind of target thing. I'm going to turn that so that it's pointing down to the primary mirror end of the telescope. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look in here. Hopefully in there you can just about see there's a red spot. There's my collimation spot right in the centre of the mirror. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these screws here to get that spot in the middle of the mirror. So I'd already slackened off the center screw, and these are going to adjust that mirror so that you can bring that spot into the right place. You see it's moving, it's just a little bit off still. Nearly there. Just you see how that's nearly in the middle of the collimation spot? Hopefully you can see that. There. That I think is about as best as I'm going to get it. Looks like it's in the centre to me. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is change to the other end. I'm going to tighten the other mirror up, or align the other mirror to make sure we got that. So interestingly, I can see that the actual laser spot, it's right there, you see it's right on the bottom edge of the target. So I'd already got the mirror rather close to alignment. So now hopefully, as I start moving these screws, you can see how the dot moves across the target. And this is aligning the mirrors. And what I want to do is make that dot disappear into that hole. And I think, there we go, it's gone. I think that should be the alignment done. So you see, it really wasn't that long a job to do it. But now, of course, I've got to see whether it's actually worked and see how my telescope works. So I've brought my scope back out again, hooked up my camera to it. I've centered on one of the maguey plants up on the mountain again, and let's see. Brilliant, absolutely perfect. So this is now really easy to focus on that maguey plant that I couldn't get before. So now I don't need to use the Barlow lens with my camera, which means that I can get hopefully sharper shots of everything that I'm looking at. And quite honestly, I'll put that photograph on there so that you can kind of like see it from the difference from before. I'm really happy it worked. So there you go. That was my little video about how to modify a refractor, a Newtonian refractor, so that you can use your camera without a Barlow lens. And hopefully I'll be doing some good moon shots in a couple of weeks' time when we get round to full moon. Okay, hope that helped. Cheers.